like beer? Do you love sports and beer? Then you're exactly where you need to be. This is the Huebs, Views, and Brews show on 1252 Sports Chicago. Cheers.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Welcome back into Huebs, Views, and Brews from my basement. And we're second week of the podcast here. And great to have you jump on in. Lots to talk about today. I actually went to my first sporting event in about a year and a half, 2 years, just this past weekend when I went to the Chicago Fire game. We'll talk about that. We'll talk baseball as we always will during the baseball season. I mentioned this last week, but who does a podcast on Monday nights when there's games going on? Well, that's me. The Bulls are playing. The Blackhawks are playing the first of 3 games against Nashville as the Blackhawks still try to keep their playoff push alive. So we'll see how those things pan out as we go along. We'll talk about some beer. We have a chance to have a guest on today. Last week we had Eric Schmidt from Orange and Brew Bottle Shop, which was awesome in Downers Grove. Today, we have a guy that does his own podcast along with Jim Margulis. We have Josh Nelson from Sox Machine Podcast. He will join us about 7:20. So we will talk with him, talk about the White Sox, and also talk about the San Francisco 49ers. If you look behind me, you see Jerry Rice, you see Joe Montana, you see 49ers stuff. There's a lot of it in my basement. I'm a big 49ers fan, and the 49ers a couple of weeks ago made that trade up. So they will be drafting number 3 in the NFL draft, which takes place Thursday, April 29th. So we'll talk about the 49ers. Josh is a big 49ers fan, probably a bigger 49er, let's say, probably not bigger, but probably a more knowledgeable 49er fan than I, and he knows it. So, of course, I had to go and I printed up the depth chart. So I got the entire depth chart for the 49ers. We'll go over it. We're not going to go position by position, so don't worry about it. We will talk some more Bears as we get closer. Next Monday night will be just a few days before the NFL draft, so we'll talk about the Chicago Bears. Hope to have a Chicago Bears draft expert or at least a Chicago Bears person on the show next week. And also next week, we are going to have Emily and Paul Slayton from Skeleton Key Brewing. I stopped there the other day. They had just another can release of a couple of their beers. And of course, I had to stop in for that. It was very crowded. It was really cool. It was crowded afternoon, like 3:30 in the afternoon. They just added a new space at Skeleton Key Brewing, and it was very, very cool. The beers were great. So we're going to get them on next week to talk a little bit about their new space, some things they have coming up, and we'll get into all that too. I wanted to do at least have one good thing about the White Sox today. So I figured this would be the perfect thing to start the show off with, as I'm going to have one of the White Sox Golden Ales from Goose Island Brewing. You can get this at your stores, at your Jewel, Binny's, everywhere. And when you go to the ballpark, you can get the White Sox Golden Ale. So I had to grab this because as we'll start talking a little bit about White Sox baseball and Cub baseball, it's not been a great couple of days. Let's say not been a great 20. Well, it's been a good, let's see, from 7 o'clock Sunday night until about 1:30 or 2 o'clock Monday afternoon. Not a good time for Chicago baseball. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. But I mentioned how I attended my first sporting event in about a year and a half. I went to the Chicago Fire game the other day. I have season tickets for the Chicago Fire. I'm the guy that buys season tickets, and for the first time ever, out of my own money, and it's the year that COVID strikes and there are no games. So the Chicago Fire had my money. Last year, Joe Mansueto and the Chicago Fire getting people into the stands. I purchased tickets when they were $25 a seat. I've got seats in the 200 level, right near midfield, great seats. Don't sit exactly in those seats right now, but sitting pretty close. And I went to the game with my girlfriend, Linda, on Saturday night. I think all sporting events should only have 9,000 or 8,000 because it was so easy to get in and out. It was so easy to get in line for the concessions. And we'll talk about concessions in just a second. Soldier Field and Chicago Park District not going to be real happy when they hear this. Everybody knows it if you go to a sporting event. But it was very, very nice. It was a cool night. The Chicago Fire played to a 2-2 tie. And yes, they have ties in soccer. They don't have a silly shootout rule. The very first hockey game I ever went to, I had to be 11 maybe. And my Uncle Pete took me to see the Chicago Blackhawks and the New York Rangers. Before we went to the game, we went to Home Run Inn Pizza over on 31st Street, and then we went to the game. Very first game, and it was a 2-2 tie. And it's when they played ties in the NHL. They didn't have overtimes. They didn't have 3-on-3. They didn't have shootouts, none of that. They had ties where you get 1 point for a tie, and the way soccer is now, and I think the way hockey should be also, but I get a lot of people that are going to disagree with me on that. But so I went to the game the other day and went to the concession stand. I had a beer, a 16-ounce Krumbacher beer, German beer. They had a nice selection of beers and cans at Soldier Field on Saturday and for the Fire games. Linda got a 16-ounce glass of Diet Dr. Pepper. We've got 2 pretzels and a container of cheese. The total for 2 drinks, 2 pretzels, and cheese was $37. That's right, $37. The beer was $12 for a 16-ounce beer. I love craft beer, okay? But I bought 12 of these White Sox Golden Ales, $9.99. Now, I understand it's always cheaper, and it's always a little more expensive at stadiums. The question is, why? It does not need to be expensive. They do not need to charge you an arm and a leg for concessions at a sporting event. $7.25 for a pretzel, and of course, we each had to get our own pretzel, so that's $14.50, and we only got 1 cup of cheese, not because it was $2.50, but because there was enough cheese in there for the 2 pretzels. But $37, and of course, me, big spender as I am, gave the girl a $3 tip because this was after she carded me. I'll be 64 in a month. And I looked at her and I said, she goes, I'm only doing my job. I said, I understand that. I said, but I am older than your parents, as I gave her my ID. So anyway, $37 for a soda, a beer, 2 pretzels, and a cup of cheese. So I was talking about this on the radio the other day. The question is why? They don't need to do this. They're doing this to rob the fans, okay? And people say, well, everybody does it. Not everybody does it. My producer on the weekends at ESPN 1000, Tyler Rocky, reminded me the Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United, the soccer team down in Atlanta, they play at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Brand new, big stadium, roof swings open and everything else like that. Here are the prices at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. These were in 2019, okay? Last year, people not in stands. Hot dog, $1.50. Pretzel bites, $4.50. A burger, $7.50. Waffle cone, $4.50. Chips and salsa, $2.50. A premium draft beer, so not a domestic beer, a premium draft beer, $6. And a large domestic beer, $7.50. So you figure a large Miller Lite, large Bud Light, $7.50. Okay, for large. A soda, $2. Bottled water, $2. So Atlanta is showing you don't need to make your patrons, your customers, spend so much money on this. And they're not raising prices because of COVID, or at least I don't think they are. People can always get to me and let me know what you think, but I'm pretty sure that that's the prices they always charge at Soldier Field, and that's the kind of prices that they charge at the United Center and things like that. And I'm going to a game with the Schaumburg Boomers Stadium in a couple of weeks. The Chicago White Sox alternate team and the Cubs alternate team, which is playing in South Bend, they play each other. So I'm going to get a chance to go to the game on a Friday afternoon, April 30th, with my buddy Larry and Bob. It's going to be interesting for me to see what prices they charge for their beer and hot dogs and things like that. A hot dog at $1.50 is actually super cheap. You can't buy a hot dog for $1.50 at a hot dog stand anywhere. And to get that at a ballpark, absolutely amazing. So it can be done. I don't know who we need to talk to. I don't know what kind of incentive or what kind of thing we need to get started, but there's no reason for them to charge so much money for concessions at sporting events. Just brutal. So I mentioned how the last, I don't know, say since last night at 7 o'clock, things haven't turned out that well. And I wrote this down. There was a broadcaster a long time ago. Some people, he also played ball. His name is Joe Garagiola. And Joe Garagiola wrote a book called Baseball is a Funny Game. I've got it in paperback somewhere around here. But if you're a big baseball fan, you know that for the most part, you live and die with your team. Cub fans are dying because as of a couple days ago, the Cubs were hitting 166 and they were at the bottom of all of baseball. The pitchers in the National League were hitting higher than Cubs as a team. And the Cubs were hitting 166. Bad things are happening. So what happens the other day? What happens on Saturday? The Cubs, Wilson Contreras hits 2 homers. Chris Bryant hits 2 homers. Javi Baez goes deep. Also, David Bodie goes deep. They had 14 hits, 13 runs, and they beat the Braves a final of 13-4. The Atlanta Braves, one of the better teams in the National League. So this is from the Cubs, from a team that was hitting 166, and they were all struggling. In that same game, Anthony Rizzo with 3 of the 14 hits. Then Sunday night, as we were all getting done with our show at Nick and Ivy Brewing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit because it was all kinds of fun. The guys from 1250 to Sports Chicago, we had all kinds of fun at Nick and Ivy the other day. So as that's ending, we see that the Atlanta Braves get 6 runs off Kyle Hendricks in the first inning. Little did I know that 4 of those runs were on home runs. Kyle Hendricks gave up 4 first-inning home runs as the Atlanta Braves go on to a 13-4 win over the Cubs yesterday. Now, 13-4, familiar score. Yeah, it's a familiar score because that's the same score the Cubs won by the day before. So 2 games, 13-4. And years ago, people used to get into 13-run pools. You'd get a different team every week or so, and you'd have a 13-run pool. You'd have money in the pool, and if a team scored 13 runs, that person would win the money. Every once in a while, there'd be 2 teams in a week that would score 13 runs. In 2 days, the same 2 teams scored 13 runs in back-to-back games. The Cubs one day, the Braves the next day. So that was Sunday night. And you got to sleep and get up early if you're going to watch baseball today because it's Patriots Day in Boston. And in Boston, they have the Boston Marathon not being run this year, probably virtually like a lot of the other marathons. But the White Sox were playing the Red Sox. The White Sox yesterday won a split doubleheader. Now, it was not a regular doubleheader. Now, none of the doubleheaders right now are regular because they're playing 7-inning games because they don't want, you'd hate to hurt those darn pitchers, right? So, and that's going to lead into What's Up Fred's Can at the end of the show. But, so the White Sox win 2 games of a doubleheader yesterday. Michael Kopech pitches in the second game, and he's perfect for 3 innings, gives up a walk, a single, comes out of the game. I don't know exactly what the rule is for how many innings you have to go to get a win in a 7-inning game, but I probably should know that. I'm a sports guy. I should know that, but I don't. In baseball, you need to go 5 innings. So the pitcher that came in after him ended up getting the victory as the Sox beat Boston in the second game of the doubleheader yesterday. So today, early morning baseball, 10 o'clock, you get Lucas Giolito going. And Lucas Giolito came in as the White Sox best pitcher, okay? Goes out there consistent, very, very good pitcher. He's pitching, likes mornings. The White Sox are they're starters with a 268 earned run average, leading all of baseball, 268 earned run average, 186 over the last 8 starts for White Sox starters. Obviously, that helped a lot with Lance Lynn pitching very well, Giolito pitching well in his last outing, and Carlos Rodon throwing a no-hitter, which Rodon's going to go on Tuesday. So we'll see. Hopefully, they can get right back on the track. And the reason they need to get back on track is because Lucas Giolito got 3 outs. Not in the first inning. Well, only in the first inning. He gave up 8 runs, and the White Sox lose today by a score of 11-4. And the White Sox fall to 8-9. This is a team that we are expecting a lot from. They got to 500 with a couple of victories, okay? They got to 500 with winning both games of a doubleheader yesterday. A split doubleheader means when the first game's over, they clear the stands, and then they let the other people in. And I think at Fenway, they're only allowing like 4,000 or 5,000 people in. So probably real easy for them to do. The game went by pretty quick yesterday, the first game. So, they win those 2 games. You figure, good thing they got their pitcher going. You got Lucas Giolito going. Perfect way. Take 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox, who were red hot coming into this series. No, that did not happen. There were other bad things that happened in that game. Good thing that happened, Tim Anderson back. Anderson came back the day after the Carlos Rodon no-hitter. He led off first pitch he saw. He got a single the other day. First pitch he saw, hit a home run in the first game of the doubleheader yesterday on Saturday. And you look at it, he had 3 hits today. He's had 2 3-hit games in his first couple games back. That's the kind of thing the White Sox need at the top of the order. What's going to happen at 3 with Moncada or Robert? What's going to happen at 4 with Abreu? Those are questions we got to figure out as a White Sox fan. And Tony La Russa is going to have to figure those out because we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. Now we got Lance Lynn on the injured list. They say he's only likely going to be out for 1 start. That would be wonderful if he only missed 1 start. We'll see how things go. But when you see Michael Kopech pitch, Tony La Russa said he will be in the rotation. But the White Sox coming into the season knew that if you have Michael Kopech from the right side and Garrett Crochet from the left side throwing heat out of the bullpen, that's really nice to have. And that's what the White Sox are looking forward to. Michael Kopech, a guy that they got in the trade from Boston a while ago. So hopefully things are going to work out for the White Sox, work out for the rotation. Lance Lynn only misses 1 game. And Giolito, the fire has burning inside of him. He can't wait, I'm sure, to get back out on the mound. It's like Boston knew what was coming. And you hesitate to say that maybe with Alex Cora as the manager of the Boston Red Sox. But they had the right approach to go after Lucas Giolito. And it worked for them. They get 8 runs in the first 2 innings and cruise to an 11-4 victory. We're going to continue talking some White Sox baseball here. We're also going to talk some 49ers football, as this guy's been on our show a lot over on ESPN 1000, a big White Sox fan, also a big 49ers fan. We bring in Josh Nelson. Josh, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Fred. How are you, man? It's nice to see your basement.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I got Niners stuff all over. I got a world champs, a White Sox jersey and things like that. And my basement is dominated by White Sox and 49ers. So it's pretty good. And thinking of those 2 things, it's appropriate to have you on this, my second podcast, because today was a rough one, one that a lot of people probably had a hard time seeing, a 10 o'clock start. But after yesterday, it's like, okay, the reason I brought up and started the show saying baseball's a funny game. You win 2 games, you're on a roll. You got Giolito going. He gets 3 outs and gives up 8 runs. This baseball that you cover all the time on Sox Machine, it's a hard thing to deal with on a 162-game basis, isn't it?
Yeah, I was getting my second vaccine shot, Fred. And then
that was less painful than what we had to see.
After I get poked, I check my phone and it's 6-1 Boston, and it's still in the first inning. Yeah. And I'm wondering what in the world has happened, because we haven't seen this type of outing from Lucas Giolito in years since his very bad 2018 season. I'm not too concerned about it. There is something that Lucas Giolito hinted at, whether it's his podcast with Chris Rose or when he's talking to beat reporters during spring training. Lucas Giolito is not a morning person.
Okay.
He's one of the last ones to arrive in spring training, where he likes to arrive around 9 o'clock. While you have Jose Abreu, who's already put in 2 hours of batting cage work by the time Giolito comes, but Giolito stays late. That's just the way that he works, because again, when he makes most of his starts, they're at 7 o'clock at night Central Time. And if he does make an afternoon start, it's 1 o'clock. Not 10 o'clock in the morning Central Time or 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And he won't use that as an excuse, but that's just part of the narrative that maybe Lucas Giolito shouldn't make a start before noon in the future. But what I do like, Fred, is that Giolito is aware of the opportunity, as you were talking about, that the White Sox had. If he goes on the mound and pitches like he has at his previous starts this season, with the White Sox scoring 4 runs, that typically is enough to cover for Lucas Giolito. And if he's on his A game, maybe the White Sox win that game and they're 9-8, and they can give themselves a little bit more cushion against the Minnesota Twins, because White Sox fans have been asking this question: is it time to freak out? And I don't think so. only because the situation in Minneapolis is really shaky at the moment. I mean, they're 6-8 and they got COVID that they're dealing with. The White Sox have Jose Abreu and Yohan Moncada not hitting. Miguel Sano is worse than those two. And the Twins are not quite sure with COVID if Adrelton Simmons, when he's going to be coming back. They got a lot of question marks as well. It's just that for the White Sox, they are missing out on some opportunities early this season to pad that cushion. And as we know, Fred, you want to add as much distance between yourself and your chief rival in the division in what is already known to be a close divisional race in 2021. At the same time, you don't want to give hope to a pesky Kansas City Royals team thinking that, hey, we can win this division. So for the White Sox, it's not quite panic time, but they have missed out on some opportunities.
Well, and then they all say they go to Cleveland for 2 games, and I'm pretty sure Bieber won't go because he just won the other day, right? So that'll be a good thing because he's been striking out 10 in every game he's pitched, strikes out 14 the other day. And every single year, Cleveland's got a nice pitching staff, but almost every year they get injuries or have something that goes wrong, and they don't have enough bats. This year, they may not have enough bats. They had just enough with Jose Ramirez hitting that homer the other day when the White Sox played them. But you look at the White Sox, and you've covered baseball long enough, and it's weird to see a baseball team go into a hitting slump. And I think getting Tim Anderson back with a couple of 3-hit games since he's returned is really going to help somewhere along the line because Abreu always starts slowly. And it's the cold weather, whatever. Even if when they start in California and Seattle, where I know Seattle was a little cold, but Abreu usually starts slow. The Yohan Moncada is starting to concern me a little bit because it's not only that he's not hitting, he doesn't look comfortable at the plate at all. His ground balls, his foul balls, he just looks like he's in pain or something. I don't know what it is when he's at the plate, but he doesn't look right.
Well, Moncada's playing good defense, so at least he's got that.
You're right.
The defensive metrics, again, it's early. But Moncada is right there with Luis Robert as far as defensive run save to start the season, which is good. So at least Moncada is providing some type of positive. I want to get back to Jose Abreu. Okay. I don't think this is weather related. Looking at Baseball Savant, last year, Jose Abreu hit 380 and slugged above 680 against fastballs. And his whiff rate against fastballs was below 20%. To start this season, Jose Abreu is hitting 148 with a 180 slugging percentage, Fred. And he's already struck out 11 times in 32 plate appearances that have ended in fastballs. In all of 2020, which I know is only 60 games, but in 130 plate appearances, Jose Abreu only struck out against a fastball 19 times. The fastball is what's giving Jose Abreu problem. And if it's the fastball, it feeds into the narrative of when is regression going to hit Jose Abreu? Because he's not a spring chicken anymore. He's entering his mid-30s. And we just saw this last season with Edwin Encarnacion, who could not hit anything faster than 93 miles per hour. Everybody in baseball is asking, how can Edwin Encarnacion be a free agent? Sure. And for me, I did the deep dive analysis. You could read it on Sox Machine. I wrote it last year. The dude can't hit anything faster than 93. Look at every pitcher that's coming into a game today. They're all throwing faster than 93. You talked about Crochet. Crochet throws a 93 mile per hour changeup. Okay. If you can't hit 93, you're not going to survive in the majors. And I don't want to go any further down the rabbit hole looking at the batted ball data, Fred, because I am afraid that if velocity is giving Abreu trouble, then it's not weather related, that it is old age and regression is starting to hit him. And that makes me very afraid. So I pinned that data research for game 50, which, looking at the calendar, is going to be the Friday before Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
And at the end of May, and I think it's worth revisiting because if the weather does warm up and he gets more comfortable and he's back on the fastball and doing what Jose Abreu has always done in his career with the White Sox, and that is crush fastballs, then there's nothing to worry about. But if Jose Abreu is hitting 220 and he's got like 5 home runs at the end of May, we'll know why. And it's because he is struggling with the fastball. So that is something to pay attention to when it comes to the White Sox offensive woes. But back to the good. You mentioned Tim Anderson. Since he's been back, he's 9 for 18. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And he's got 3 stolen bases, so he's making things happen both with the bat and with his legs. And I don't know if you've noticed, Fred, his throwing motion continues to progress in a good way defensively. He is making much stronger throws. His feet are better situated to make these throws, and he's more balanced as a defensive player than we saw in his rookie year. This is someone that has progressed season by season. He's not the best defensive shortstop in Major League Baseball, but he's getting better. But in this lineup today, with Anderson, Adam Eaton, and Luis Robert batting third, this is something that I want Tony La Russa, Fred, to try in Cleveland the next couple of games. Because let's face it, these are the 3 guys hitting. And you know what? Put your Mercedes in the cleanup spot. Take your 4 guys that are hitting right now, group them together, and see how many runs they can generate. And then you could put Jose Bray in the 5 spot and put Yohan Moncada in the 6 spot. Put Yasmani Grandal in the 7th spot. If you bump those guys down in the lineup, maybe that lights a fire under them as kind of like, hey, you're not in your usual spot because you're not hitting. We need runs. And maybe that wakes something up in them. But it is nice that Tim Anderson's back in this lineup. I just like the creativity, though, from La Russa from today's lineup. Why not pair Anderson, Eaton, and Robert together in the top of the lineup and see what kind of damage that they can do? Because it's not just contact and power. There's also a lot of speed with those 3.
Yes. Well, and the one thing you mentioned, too, about back to Tim Anderson, I saw him on MLB Central the other day, on the day he was going to come back on Thursday, and they were talking about him hitting, and he made the comment about how he still needs to work on his defense. And that's the only thing I've criticized him on recently. Actually, not too recently. 2 years ago, even when he won the batting title, he led the league in 2 categories, batting and errors.
Yep.
And so he has gotten better, but he knows that. And as you're saying, he has progressed. He has worked on things. And you got to remember where he came from and when he was drafted. It's taken a while. It's not easy becoming a shortstop in Major League Baseball. They were talking today, I think it was on the broadcast, about how he usually gets overlooked when you look at the top shortstops in the game. I think they have him listed around 10. And he's got the ego. He wants to get up there. He wants to show what he can do. And I think that it's, with him hitting the ball, and as it gets warmer and good things happen, and this team starts winning some games, which I know they're going to do, the bullpen's not going to struggle. They had, let's see, 7 of the 9 losses, I think, the bullpen has had, because I know today's went to Lucas. So they had 7 of the 9 losses. Now, who knew that bunting on Garrett Crochet was a way to get victories? Maybe you don't bring Garrett Crochet in with a man on second base anymore, because they did that a couple times, didn't work all that well. But the rest of the bullpen, Bummer yesterday, he got a guy on immediately, double play, got out of the inning. Everything looked good. For a while at the start of the season, I thought Matt Foster was going to become the new Jimmy Cordero, because he pitched like in 3 of the first 4 games. I said, okay, slow down a little, Tony. He's your guy, it appears. And then he apologized for leaving him in too long in that one game. But the bullpen, even though they're struggling a bit, I still don't have any concerns about that. I think as it goes along, they're going to come back and we're going to see what we expect to see in the bullpen.
Yeah, the only area of concern that I have, well, I should say 2. I'm wondering what's going on with Garrett Crochet's fastball velocity, because it is about 3 to 4 ticks off from what we saw last year. And it's not the same pitch at 97 as it is at 100 miles per hour. He doesn't get the same type of cut and movement that Michael Kopech gets at 97 miles per hour. And even the same type of cut and movement from Dylan Cease as well. So you have 3 pitchers that are throwing a fastball at 97 miles per hour. And Crochet is getting the least out of his fastball compared to Cease. And then there's a gigantic gap. And then there's Michael Kopech, who's getting sensational results from his 97 mile per hour fastball. And with the bullpen, I think they know that they maybe bought into the hype a little bit going into the season. The key number is that the White Sox have 4 losses this season when they had the lead in the 6th inning or later in a game.
Okay.
And you don't want to look back at those two losses against the Angels and the loss against Seattle and the loss against the Kansas City Royals and find yourself 2 games out of the postseason, because it's really easy to go back into the first couple of weeks of the season, Fred, and say, hey, if you guys were on point, if you're ready to go when the season started, you wouldn't be in this position. You're hoping that doesn't come back and bite the White Sox in the backside. But I'm with you. I think Hendricks is throwing the ball a lot better. Aaron Bummer, for some odd reason, is having struggles against left-handed hitters. But boy, right-handed hitters are doing nothing against him. Which is a good sign. And you mentioned Jose Ramirez. I think for this upcoming season, in a critical situation, you got to have Bummer face Jose Ramirez and flip Ramirez around. He is not as dangerous from the right side as he is from the left side. That's a note that I would mention to all White Sox fans to pay attention to see if La Russa does make that type of move over the next 2 games. But everybody else, the bullpen is looking good. The starting pitching is looking good for the most part. It sucks that Lance Lynn is going on the injured list for a couple of weeks, and hopefully it's only a couple of weeks. But yeah, again, I mean, if the White Sox bullpen, they hold on to those 4 leads, we're talking about a 12-5 Chicago White Sox team.
Right.
That is a much different conversation you and I are having, Fred.
Yeah.
The White Sox are 12-5 than 8-9. And again, it goes back to why some White Sox fans, I think deservedly so, should feel a little uneasy, because if the White Sox are 12-5 and the Twins are still 6-8, boy, you have given yourself a 4 or 5 game cushion over your chief rival in the American League Central. And that could go a long way in winning the division. And again, hopefully this doesn't burn the White Sox in the end.
One more question about the bullpen. A couple of weeks ago, Tony La Russa, when he was first a manager, way back in the day, probably not so much with the White Sox, but after he left and went to Oakland and everything else, he was really big on bring a guy in the 7th, bring a guy into the 8th, bring a guy into the 9th. When the season started this year, he started running a guy out there for an inning and then having him come out the next inning and throw. He did it with Kopech. He did it with Hoyer. Heck, he had Hoyer go 2 1/3, I think. And I was thinking that was a good thing. And then the other day, Hoyer strikes out the side, comes back out, gives up some runs. What's your opinion on the way he's doing it? I know Len Casper had asked him during spring training if, because of the 3-batter rule, that he may let a guy, start the next inning instead of getting rid of him and bringing another guy in, so that guy doesn't have to face the 3 hitters. What's your opinion of the way he's handling the bullpen and the way he's using them and letting them go into the next innings?
I don't mind the extended relief appearances, because let's face it, this is a good test for the postseason. Okay, so relievers are probably not just going to go an inning. If you are a good reliever in the White Sox bullpen, and this team does make the postseason, a starter like, let's say, Dallas Keuchel may only get you into the 4th inning. Tony La Russa needs to know who he can give the ball to take care of the 5th and 6th inning. And I think this is a good test early to see who those guys are. Matt Foster has been burned, but Michael Kopech has not. Garrett Crochet, a little iffy, but Cody Hoyer could probably do the job.
Sure.
And I think it's a good test. And maybe eventually, especially when you get into the situations where the White Sox don't have an off day for like 15 days, that we may only see Hoyer throw an inning because La Russa may need him for the next day. But I think right now in this first 17 games, or at least the first month of the season, Fred, that I see La Russa, I don't want to say experiment, because maybe that's not the right word, but he's trying to get a good feel right now what he has on this roster. And the roster will probably change after the trade deadline, but he's just trying to get a good feel and comfort level on what these players can do. So I'm cool with it, because you can't win the division, the American League Central, in April. So why not see who can give you more than just an inning out of the bullpen? Sure.
I was going to ask you about your mean Mercedes. I was going to talk to you about throwing the ball around, but people that follow you, Josh Nelson, on Twitter, and they'll see 3 things. You'll talk White Sox, you'll talk 49ers, and you'll talk gambling. And so those are all good things, and things that all the sports fans out there are talking about. And now with the draft coming up in a couple of weeks, you are probably a more knowledgeable 49er fan than I am. I know you're a 49er guy. Mine was when I was growing up, I'd watch Montana play at Notre Dame when I'm sitting in my bedroom in Cicero because college football, there wasn't a lot on. It was always Notre Dame. Became a Montana fan. He got drafted by the Niners. How did you become a Niner fan?
My mom loved Joe Montana.
Okay.
And when you're growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, it's really easy to fall in love with the 49ers.
Yes, it is.
So it started with Joe Montana and then Jerry Rice. I mean, I just loved watching Jerry Rice play. And then, the years with Steve Young and then the heartbreak, those two NFC championship games against Dallas and then redemption in 94.
Yep.
And then, just kind of like that was a good stretch for being a White Sox 49ers fan, 93, 94, with the White Sox making the American League Championship Series, but losing in Toronto. And, the 49ers finally getting over the hump and winning that Super Bowl. But I'm diehard. I'm loyal. So I've stuck with the 49ers through the lean years.
And there have been some people that are Niner fans don't realize, but there were some years they were god awful.
Well, this is good timing because Alex Smith announced his retirement. And,
yes.
You want to talk about someone that's had a very interesting career arc. He was a bust before Jim Harbaugh took the job with San Francisco.
Yeah.
And Harbaugh was able to unlock something in Alex Smith. And I go back to that divisional playoff appearance for the 49ers where Alex Smith outdueled Drew Brees. And it's a fantastic game. And of course, everybody knows it for the catch 3, which Vernon Davis making the game winning touchdown catch.
Yep.
But that game seemed to unlock something with Alex Smith. And it unlocked something with the 49ers franchise where they have been more successful the last 10 years than after Steve Young gets knocked out with a concussion. And you had some good seasons with Jeff Garcia and Terrell Owens. Then a lot of bad. Poor Patrick Willis. He played on some bad 49er teams. But, this is a interesting situation next week. And I don't have a good handle on it, on who the 49ers are going to take with the 3rd overall pick. I thought it was a really bold move by them. They need help in the defensive backfield. They need corners. They need safeties. I thought they were going to stay at number 12 and try to take a cornerback, especially someone that could replace Richard Sherman on the outside. But going with the number 3 pick, they're obviously taking a quarterback. And I see the chats already, the questions popping up on who the 49ers are going to take. Wow. I got no idea, Fred. I've got money on Mac Jones. I've got money on Justin Fields. I really don't know. I don't know who they're going to take. And if they take one of those two, I'll be happy because I'll win some money. But they could take any of the quarterbacks that fall to them.
Yeah. Well, today, Monday, Trey Lance had his pro day. So I think they were there checking him out.
Of course.
Too. Yeah. So they were doing their due diligence and things like that. A couple of weeks ago, I had heard that Lynch and Shanahan were not on the same page on who they liked. Now that could have just been a
Doesn't that sound familiar?
Yeah, doesn't it sound familiar? So, but it's funny because as a Niner fan, this, but Bears fans keep talking about improving the offensive line. Well, what the Niners did was going out and got the center for the last decade and Alex Mack coming in from Atlanta, and then they got Trent Williams to stick around. So they're taking care of their offensive line. Are they going to start the season, you think, with Garoppolo and then work another guy in, or is it going to be similar to what the Bears did with Trubisky? You'll be here if the other guy fails because Garoppolo's still making money. I don't know that they'll be able to move him or get rid of him, but do you expect him to be there when the opening day starts?
Yeah, I think this is the last season for Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers, but I think he'll start the season. And you're going to hear a lot of comparisons to the Chiefs back to Alex Smith when he started and Patrick Mahomes was the backup. And I could see that happening. But Fred, we know this. Jimmy Garoppolo could have a good 5-game start, and then all of a sudden he's going to miss a couple of weeks for some injury. And I hope that they could bring in somebody that has more talent than CJ Beathard or Nick Mullins, who we have seen. Oh my gosh, we have seen far too much of those two quarterbacks the last 3 seasons. That at least gives them a chance to win. Because as you mentioned, with this type of offensive line, and I love the running game the 49ers have, and if they can keep George Kittle on the field, there is some explosiveness with this offense. And if they can address the defensive backfield, if they get some solid corners, some solid safeties, and help themselves in the back end, This is a team that could challenge in the NFC West, but Fred, this division is an enigma, and it's part of an enigma because I think it's still so incredibly tough because I like Arizona. As long as Seattle has Russell Wilson, they are never out of it. And with the Rams getting Matthew Stafford, that's really interesting. And they've got a lot of talent on that side. It's not an easy road for the 49ers, but we'll see who they take at number 3.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy for them. I listened to the 49ers podcast the other day, 49ers Talk from the Bay Area, NBC Sports Bay Area, and they're all excited about the defensive line. And obviously they were talking about quarterbacks, but you look at the D line and, Kinlaw, Bosa showing pictures that he's ready. He's happy to, he's ready to go in this coming season, and keeping those guys healthy because they've had so many injuries the last couple of years dealing with it on both sides of the ball. And now some of the running backs they've picked up are gone, but they still have Wilson. They have Mostert, who, every time he goes there, he just does the job. And then when Wilson comes in, all he does is score touchdowns. It's amazing for people that play fantasy football. If you see once he's getting the ball, it's like, okay, we've got to have him on our team. He's going to score, and he does it often, scoring 2 or 3 games or touchdowns a game. But it's going to be fun. There's so many different people that are out there. I thought the move from 12 to 3 was crazy. That they made it, not crazy to do it, but came so unexpectedly. And now I'm seeing things like the Dolphins may actually move down again. They were 3. They moved up to 6, and maybe try to move down a little bit more. So it's going to be an interesting day one of the NFL draft. Who knows if it'll be interesting for the Bears, but it'll be interesting for a lot of the other teams there.
Is Atlanta staying at 4? I mean, there's just so many stories. Yeah. It's like Jacksonville, they're not a story. The Jets at number 2, they're not a story.
No,
the story begins at pick 3. And then 4 is going to be crazy. 5 is going to be crazy. And until you get to like pick 15, if Trey Lance is still on the board, he's going to go to New England if he falls that far. And then who knows what the Bears are going to take at pick 20 if they don't find a way to trade up. It's going to be a fascinating NFL draft to watch next week.
It is. It should be a good one. Well, I appreciate you jumping on an off night. You didn't have to sit and watch White Sox baseball all night. I appreciate you jumping on for a few minutes and talking about the White Sox and about our Niners. And it'll be fun one way or another. The draft is always fun, interesting. And then we've got months to wait before any of those guys actually hit the field. But it'll be a lot. Yeah. You have your draft in April, the end of April. You don't see the field till September. So it'll be fun. But I appreciate you jumping on. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thanks, Fred.
Josh Nelson with the Sox Machine Podcast. Got to give it a listen. Him and Jim Margulis, they go in depth. They also do instant recaps each and every morning after games during the course of the week, and it's really good stuff. If you're a diehard Sox fan, they break it down for you, and they're very, very objective. They got the stats. They've got the analytics. They know what they're talking about. When I do my walk around McCullum Park over here in Downers Grove, I pop it on numerous times throughout the baseball season to listen to see what they're talking about, because it makes an old guy like me think, an old guy like me try to figure out what some of the analytics are and how they relate to the games that I'm watching, because I don't often understand all of them. So we got that. We hit the Niners. We hit the White Sox. It's great. Again, you can go to Sox Machine Podcast, and it's just a great, great thing. I showed you earlier that I am drinking the White Sox Golden Ale, okay? And it's very good, made by Goose Island. They made it about a year or so ago. They were hoping to have it at the stadiums last year, and then there were no fans. So the president of Goose Island actually stopped by the studio at ESPN 1000. It was in January or February before the season last year, and brought a 12-pack. This is not the 12-pack. I bought another one. And they had 16-ounce cans, which had the schedule on them, a peel-back schedule for last year, which probably should be a collector's item, right? Since that schedule was thrown away. But this is called Huebs, Views, and Brews because there are a few things I know. I know soccer. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I know Chicago sports, and I know sports. You see my background. My basement's all in beer and sports. Picture up here about bars in the near Sox Park and near Comiskey Park, now Guaranteed Rate Field, and things like that. But I wanted to mention a couple of beers that I picked up during the week. We're not having a beer guest today, But I wanted to talk about a couple of beers that I picked up during the course of the week and a couple I had yesterday that are very, very good. And I wanted to let you know if you were in the Lockport area to head on down there and check them out. I got a guy asking me the favorite brewery in the Chicago area. I don't hit Chicago itself because there are so many good ones. Off Color Brewing's very good. Half Acre's very good. The Goose Island on Clybourne is very, very good. And there's so many others. I don't get a chance to go up north very much to Microphone Brewing and some of the other one, Church Street Brewing up that way. And I've not hit St. Charles and the Geneva area yet. And they have Alter Brewing, Riverlands Brewing, Art of History Brewing. It's so many breweries all over the place. That's why I decided to do this with beer, because throughout the course of the days, we're going to do some talk to brewers, talk to people that run bottle shops and things like that. I mentioned we had Eric Schmidt from Orange and Brew on last week. Next week, we're going to have the couple from Skeleton Key, Paul and Emily Slayton will be on, talk about some collaboration they have coming up. We'll discuss that in a little bit. And also Thomas Beckerman from Goldfinger is going to come out with us in a couple of weeks. And that's one of the beers I actually stopped and picked up. Goldfinger is a brewery in Downers Grove, and they specialize in lagers, pilsners, the lighter beers, the beers that you're used to drinking, the beers you used to drink when you were growing up. Okay, when you first started drinking beers, you drink a lager, you would drink a pilsner, probably not even know it was a pilsner. Okay, well, they came out with their Maibach. Okay, a Maibach, MAI stands for May. It's a Maibach beer, kind of a little bit of a stronger version of a German Helles beer. A lighter beer is the German Helles Lager, and it's an update on the style that was very, very popular, and it's been around for a long time, and it comes out around this time of year. Some people say I love seeing Maibachs out there because I know that outdoor concerts are coming, picnics are coming, things like that. And Andrew from 1252 saying he's enjoying a lake life. We're going to talk about that in a minute because I had one of those yesterday. It's very, very good. So if you get a chance and find a Goldfinger, they've canned four. This is the fourth beer I think they've canned. They canned their Pils. They canned their Vienna Lager, which is very, very good. And the Maibach, and there's one other one I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But if you get a chance, very recognizable cans. Cans are all the same with the Goldfinger logo there. So the Maibach is very, very good. And I mentioned this last week. I went over to Miskatonic Brewing. Miskatonic Brewing is in Darien, just north of I-55, just off of Cass Avenue. And they were putting out and canning their Milkshake IPA Storm Shake. And this is an amazing beer. Now, a Milkshake IPA has hops in it. IPAs, have a lot of hops, but it also has lactose, and this has vanilla. So it's a little bit of a cloudier beer when you pour it. It's a very, very tasty beer. And I'm glad it's only in 12-ounce cans because I'm pretty sure it's 8.3 alcohol by volume. Very, very good, very tasty. But Storm Shake is a really good one if you get a chance to pick up some Storm Shake. Miskatonic's got a lot of great stuff. They always have music at their brewery. On weekends, they have music. Their brewery is also the brewery that Hop Butcher does most of their brewing out of. And if you're a beer fan at all, you know that Hop Butcher usually drops 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 beers on a Thursday. And those are the beers that people are always looking out, always trying to find throughout the course of the week. So Hop Butcher is another one that's really good. Now, I mentioned yesterday, we had a great time over at Nick and Ivy. It's a brewery, a newer brewery in Lockport, right on State Street. And all of us from 1252 Sports Chicago were there. Fat Mike was there. Angelo was there. We had everybody there. David Schuster and I were there, and we talked for about an hour or so. Also, Fat Mike had a chance to talk with Paul and also Chad. Paul is the owner of Nick and Ivy, and Chad is the brewer. And this is interesting to me. And I'm going to talk about the beers I had that were very, very good in a minute. But there's so many breweries out there, and you wonder how all these breweries can be making such good beer. And I had talked to a couple of people when Nick and Ivy first opened, and they said, we had a couple of their beers. They were okay. So yesterday I'm talking to Chad, and I said, how'd things go when you first started? He goes, we had a couple that we started with. He goes, they weren't very good. And I said, what'd you do? He goes, well, I sat down, I figured some things out. He said, and now I've really happy with the beers I'm making and really happy with the beers I'm cranking out. And they've got a list of 12 of them. Go to Nick and Ivy Brewing and Brewery, and you can find it online, the list of the 12 beers they have in their tap room all the time. I had 3 of them yesterday. I think it's Snow As Is, because it's SNOASIS. That's a vanilla porter. That was very, very good. I got to the show yesterday about 20 minutes before we started doing the Fat Mike Chicago show, and the vanilla porter was sitting there, so I drank it. And then all of a sudden there was another one, so I drank that one too. The Lake Life is one that they just started. It is a blueberry wheat beer, perfect beer for the summer, perfect beer for the spring, playing golf. Fat Mike said he was down in a few of them, and it's a very tasty beer. My girlfriend Linda had one yesterday. We were there. Very good, very tasty. Not overbearing blueberry. It's good, and wheat beers are very, very good in the spring. And then the third one I had is called the People's Elbow, okay? It's got chocolate caramel, toasted coconut, and it goes very well with Samoas. Now, I think they actually took Samoa Girl Scout cookies and put it in the beer. I'll tell you one thing. It's very, very good. Very tasty, and not, you would think very sweet when I say chocolate, toasted coconut, and the cookies. Not super sweet, but very, very tasty. So if you get a chance, head on over to Nick and Ivy. Great, great place. They have music on the weekends. Paul's a great guy. He's almost always there. We had a great time yesterday also with Manja Pizza. Yeah, I didn't have to eat much the rest of the day after I left there with Manja Pizza. That was very, very tasty. Another couple things about beer, okay? One of them is, and I saw this the other day. This happened when I was on the air the other day. And that is, the San Diego Padres are, the White Sox, not the only team that threw a no-hitter. Joe Musgrove of the San Diego Padres also threw a no-hitter. And here's what I saw. Hometown hero Joe Musgrove handsomely rewarded after tossing the first no-hitter in San Diego Padres franchise history. San Diego's Ballast Point Brewing Company said that Musgrove, who is a San Diego native, grew up down the street from the stadium, quote, deserves to never pay for a beer in this town again. So, Ballast Point Brewery gifted a lifetime supply of beer from any Ballast Point location. He never has to worry about buying beer anymore. And he said, how cool is this? He said, a locally funded brewery. Holy cow, that's free beer for life right there. It's my favorite spot also. Thank you, Ballast Point. It will get used well, I promise. Now, the question is, Carlos Rodon throws a no-hitter for the White Sox. Which Chicago craft brewery is going to make an appeal to Carlos Rodon of Beer for Life? Now, Goose Island is a sponsor for the Chicago White Sox. Modelo is also a White Sox sponsor. The White Sox do a great job with their craft beer in the Crave Cave down under the right field bleachers. They do a great job with their craft beer. So that's the question right now. Who is going to step up and give Carlos Rodon Beer for Life? Now, hopefully it's beer he likes. Beer's a little bit easier than wine for life, I guess. But Beer for Life, that would be a wonderful thing. Brewery that you really enjoy. Soccer. Chicago Fire soccer. We got a couple more minutes here. And the Chicago Fire played their first game. I talked about it at the beginning of the show. And the Chicago Fire played a 2-2 tie. Robert Barrich, who was their leading scorer last year, and Luka Stojanovic playing his first game at Soldier Field. They both scored goals. The Chicago Fire had a 2-0 lead 11 minutes into the game. At halftime, it was 2-2. Second half, no scoring. A lot of chances, including in the last minute or two of the game. Chicago Fire had one that just went past the post. Also, a guy taken down just outside of the penalty area. A lot of the fans yelling, cheering, screaming, saying it should have been a penalty kick. No, it was never supposed to be a penalty kick. The referee made the right call, and the Chicago Fire, New England Revolution play to a 2-2 draw. They play Atlanta coming up this week. Quickly, I wanted to bring something else up in soccer. And it's big because Waddle and Sylvie were even talking about it. And Sylvie knows very little, if anything, about soccer. But Bleck and Abdallah, the producers for that show, know their soccer. The European is a league that they are trying to put together. And when I say trying, 12 of Europe's leading football clubs come together to announce they have agreed to establish a new midweek competition, the Super League, governed by its founding clubs. Okay. Now, this is as if, okay, let's go in football. There are 32 teams in football. Say the top 12 teams in football decided we're going to play a tournament where we play each other in the middle of the week. We'll still play our games on Sunday, but on Wednesday, we're going to play a tournament, which is for a bunch of money, and only the best teams are going to play. So maybe you take the Super Bowl winners and some other ones, and this is what the European soccer is starting to do. 12 clubs outlined an ambition to bring in 3 more clubs on board. Those were thought to be Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, and Paris Saint-Germain, but none of those have stepped up and said that they are interested. The clubs, the big 6 clubs, all agreed in principle to support proposals backed by Italians club Juventus, AC Milan, and Inter Milan, in addition to Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Tottenham. Now, this is freaking out the people in England because this is not the way you do it. You play during the season. If you finish in the top 4, you go to the Champions League, which is the midweek tournament that's there. What the Super League is trying to do is say, every year we have our 15 teams. We'll bring 5 more in, but every year it's these 15 monster teams from around Europe that are playing in the tournament with 5 other teams. We will not play in the Champions League. The Champions League just announced they're going to have a 36-team format. They announced that earlier today, and soccer, world soccer, is up for grabs right now. They have no idea how this is all going to play out. England is, a lot of the English fans just completely crazy over the way this is, because the fans in England have been with Liverpool, have been with Arsenal, have been with Man. It's just like, Sox, Cubs, whatever. And all of a sudden, if they told you, listen, we're going to play in a different league where we may not be able to play in the World Series, but we're going to play in our own little tournament. And that's the easiest way for me to describe what this means with soccer in Europe. So it's kind of crazy. One more thing, and I'm going to try to do this on each and every show, but each and every show, there's at least one thing that's up Fred's can. So hopefully we can get to that right now.
Well, maybe it's just because you're ugly.
Ugly? You gotta be kidding me.
Oh, come on! Time for What's Up Fred's Can on 1252 Sports Chicago.
Yeah, well, there's something up my can today, and it's something that has bothered me. A lot of people think it's cute. You'll see on the highlights for baseball that Yermin Mercedes was pitching because the White Sox were losing so bad. You'll see that Danny Mendick was pitching because the White Sox were losing so much, and they didn't want to use one of their pitchers because they wanted to save their arms for the next couple of games. That's stupid. It's making a mockery of the game of baseball, okay? If you're not going to throw a pitcher, and if you're not going to throw somebody, then just say, listen, we give up. Forget it. You're winning. We can't catch up. We don't want to throw our other pitchers. Take the victory. Call it off. It's silly, in my opinion, to see players out there pitching. Who knows what happens? Yermin Mercedes could have stumbled, and all of a sudden now you don't have a hitter. Danny Mendick, you're not too worried about. But Danny Mendick, a young guy playing second and shortstop, in my opinion, just silly. We don't need to see position players pitching in baseball blowouts. It's bad enough the game's out of control. It's not funny. It's not cute. In my opinion, just making a mockery of the game. And it's silly. The one thing it does show you, though, as I say, it's silly, and as I belch up the beer, the one thing it shows you is so many pitchers, as Josh Nelson from Sox Machine mentioned, so many pitchers are coming in throwing 93, 95, 98, 99 miles an hour, and guys are having problems hitting it. The one thing it showed you with Yermin Mercedes and Danny Mendick pitching, you don't have to throw the ball hard in order to get guys out. Even though it was at Fenway, guys are flying to the warning track, guys are hitting into double plays, guys are popping up, guys were striking out on 40-mile-an-hour pitches earlier today at Fenway from Danny Mendick and Yermin Mercedes. So even though I don't like it, even though position players pitching is up my can, maybe you should just have a pitcher that throws like lobs. When I was growing up, my buddies and I would play lob baseball at Goodwin School in Cicero. And we were all out of high school, and we're putting the ball on the roof at Goodwin School. We never broke a window, which was amazing to me. They must have had plexiglass windows at that school or something. But we put it up on that, and we were just lobbing the ball. But there were also guys that would hit ground balls, pop the ball up. And that's what the major leaguers are doing when they're seeing a ball coming to the plate 40, 50, 55, 60 miles an hour. So I would not be surprised. You've had knuckleballers who've done things, but no one's just been out there lobbing the ball and seeing if they can go through an entire game that way. I'd love to see a major league team take a chance, bring a pitcher up, a guy that can throw the ball 40, 50 miles an hour, just throw the ball over the plate all the time. See what major league hitters could eventually do with that. Who knows? They've done other things in baseball to try things out. So thanks a lot for checking out the second episode of Huebs, Views, and Brews. We'll do it again next week. We'll have Paul and Emily Slayton from Skeleton Key on, and also we'll talk more about the upcoming NFL draft as the Bears with the 20th pick. Will it stay the 20th pick when it comes draft night on that Thursday night? And I'm not sure about you. David Kaplan loves the movie Draft Day. I like Kevin Costner, but there's something else in the movie Draft Day I like, and that's Jennifer Garner. So I will always watch Draft Day if it's on. Yeah, she's a little young for me, but hey, all you do is sit on the couch and wonder, right? So thanks a lot for tuning in. Have a beer. Go White Sox. Hopefully the Cubs get their bats going. And we'll talk with you again next week right here on Huebs, Views, and Brews on 1252 Chicago Sports.